We often think of bias as a human problem. But what if the biggest biases out there aren't in people's heads, but coded into the algorithms that run our lives? And here's the kicker, they learned it from us. Today, we're going to trace that hidden code of bias, all the way from the weird shortcuts our brains take to the massive systems that shape our world.
Seriously, just think about your brain for a minute. It's incredible, right? It makes thousands of little shortcuts and snap judgments every single day just to help you get by. But here's the thing. What happens when we take that exact same mental software, flaws and all, and use it to build systems that make decisions for millions of people? That's the huge question we're diving into.
All right, so to figure out how bias gets hardwired into our systems, we've got to go back to the source, the original source code, if you will. And that means we need to take a look inside our own heads.
So what are we talking about here? It's called cognitive bias, and the key word is systematic. This isn't just random error. Think of it as a feature, not a bug, in your brain's operating system. It's designed to save a ton of mental energy by creating these little shortcuts or heuristics. But, and this is a big but, that amazing efficiency comes with a pretty serious blind spot. Let me ask you something. Have you ever seen a big, dramatic news story about a plane crash and then felt, a little nervous about your next flight? I think we all have, even though logically we know flying is incredibly safe. So what's going on? Why does our gut feeling totally contradict the facts? Well, it comes down to a mental shortcut called the availability heuristic. It's pretty simple, actually. Those super vivid, dramatic images of a plane crash, they stick in your brain. They're easy to recall. The thousands of boring, everyday car trips that end safely, not so much. Our brain makes a critical mistake. It thinks easy to remember means likely to happen. And boom, that's a cognitive bias at work.
And this kind of thing leads to all sorts of other mental glitches. Here's one I guarantee you've done. When I mess up, say I'm late for a meeting, it's because the traffic was a nightmare. It was an external thing, right? But when you're late for the same meeting, my brain might jump to, wow, they're so disorganized. See the difference? We're the actor in our own movie, so we see all the situational stuff. But for everyone else, we're just an observer, and we tend to judge their character instead. Okay, so we've got it. Our brains are full of these little shortcuts that aren't always right. They're just part of being human. But now for the crucial step. How does a wonky thought in one person's head become a massive flawed system out in the real world? And this is not some new, shocking revelation. Listen to this. All the way back in 1976, an AI pioneer named Joseph Weizenbaum basically called it. He said that the code will always include the programmer's own ideas about how the world works, and that includes all their biases and expectations. The human is always in the machine. So here's the basic blueprint for how this happens. It's a simple but dangerous four-step process. Step 1. It starts with just one unconscious belief, a cognitive bias in a designer's head. Step 2. That belief influences how they design something, whether it's code or a test or hiring rules. Steps 3. That bias system gets rolled out to everyone. And step 4. Suddenly that tiny, invisible bias from one person's mind is creating huge, unfair results for millions. Okay, enough with the theory. This stuff is happening right now, out in the real world. Let's look at some case studies that show this process in action. Check this out. A standardized test asked students to write about someone who deserved a key to the city. Seems harmless, right? But a student pointed out that lots of kids from lower-income families had literally no idea what that phrase meant. The test designer just assumed everyone would know. So the test wasn't actually measuring writing skill anymore. It was measuring whether you grew up with a specific set of cultural references. The bias is baked right in. And sometimes the results of this are just staggering. Get this, a major study looked at commercial facial recognition systems and found that for darker-skinned women, the maximum error rate was a shocking 35%. 35. For lighter-skinned men, less than 1%. And the reason is so simple it's almost absurd. The data they used to teach the AI was mostly pictures of, you guessed it, lighter-skinned men. Garbage in, garbage out. Or how about Amazon's famous attempts to build an AI recruiting tool? The idea was great. Have an AI screen resumes to find the best people. So they fed it 10 years of their own hiring data. The problem? That data reflected a decade of human bias. The AI basically taught itself that male candidates were better, because historically that's who Amazon had hired. It got so bad it started penalizing resumes that had the word women's on them, and even automatically threw out applicants from all women's colleges. They had to scrap the whole thing. It's even in the words we use. A Stanford study dug into performance reviews and found these wild, consistent patterns. Feedback from men was usually about their skills, with clearer, actionable steps for getting a promotion. But feedback for women? It was often vague, focused on their personality. They were praised for being a team player or great to work with, but that kind of praise rarely leads to a promotion. It's a subtle but powerful difference.
Okay, so this is where things get really scary. Because these systems don't just reflect our biases, they can actually amplify them. They create these vicious feedback loops that can spin a small bias into a massive runaway problem.
A perfect example is predictive policing software. Here's how the loop works. The system starts with data that shows more arrests in a specific neighborhood. So the algorithm says, okay, send more police to that area. With more cops on the street, they naturally make more arrests, right? For everything. That new arrest data then gets fed back into the algorithm, which now says, see, I was right. This neighborhood is a hotspot. So it sends even more police. And you can see how the cycle just reinforces and amplifies itself over and over.
And this has very real consequences. A huge investigation by ProPublica looked at an algorithm called Compass, used in courtrooms to predict if a defendant will commit another crime. What they found was just, wow, it was twice as likely to falsely flag black defendants as being high risk compared to white defendants. The system wasn't just biased, it was wrapping that bias in this shiny package of objective data and making it even worse.
So the problem is obvious. It's big, it's systemic. The next question is, what do we do about it? Now, the go-to answer for a lot of companies is, let's just train people to be aware of their biases. But it's really not that simple.
Yeah, this might come as a surprise. The go-to solution for a lot of organizations, unconscious bias training, is just not the silver bullet everyone hoped it would be. There's a ton of research showing that just telling people they have biases rarely actually changes how they behave in the long run. Even worse, sometimes mandatory training can actually backfire. Think about it. People don't like being forced to do things, so they get resentful. Sometimes the training can accidentally reinforce stereotypes. And maybe the biggest danger of all is that it gives everyone a false sense of security. The company can say, hey, we did the training, and then they stop looking for the real systemic problems. So where does that leave us? It's a tough spot. If the systems we build are just reflections of our own minds, complete with all our flaws and shortcuts, then fixing them isn't as simple as debugging some code. It's about changing how we build things from the ground up. It means questioning our data, questioning our own assumptions, and maybe most importantly, making fairness a core feature from the very beginning, not some add-on at the end. The real question we have to ask ourselves is, how do we stop building systems that mirror who we are and start building systems that reflect who we want to be?